What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're taking a look at S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl here on the Steam Deck, and this game has been a mess. Actually, Flight Simulator and this game the past couple of days has really balled up videos and made it very difficult to get anything done. But focusing on S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 here, unfortunately, this game is pretty rough, and I would say for most people going to be a pretty unplayable experience here on the Steam Deck. I'll show a few different areas, but really it's a rough experience. It has performance issues anyway on console and PC, but in general, its performance here pretty rough on deck. Also, it has no controller support. It has controller support, but it doesn't work on deck or on Steam at all for any of my handhelds here at all. So I had to go through and kind of manually adjust this layout kind of quick and dirty, just so I could kind of play the game, test the game, and see what it was doing here. Make my flashlight work, my reload the way it's supposed to, crouch the way it's supposed to. None of that stuff would work. Swapping weapons, the weapon wheel, all that, I had to go through and kind of start mapping my own stuff out and figuring out what I needed to put there in order to make it playable. So kind of a big issue there. Also, it compiles shaders every time. Now, it's not as long as the first time, which is like 20 to 28 minutes, but every time, for me, it's been a 3 to 5 minute compile when I want to launch the game, which is why I have like 6 hours or more in this game so far, and I'm still barely past the beginning. I've got low settings because anytime you try to bump anything up, it's just so very GPU bound and even CPU in most places that you just can't really get away with it. And I'll be turning motion blur off as well. You have TSR and FSR and XeSS. I'm just sticking with FSR and probably balanced in the gameplay. That's really about the best I could do. And the game has in-game frame gen, which is good for the other devices, but it's no good here on the deck, especially at such a low base FPS. Field of view has been left at 90 default, no frame rate limits, VSync is off, and you can adjust the contrast and brightness as you need for the game. Now, in the beginning of the game, it's kind of this nighttime level thing that you're playing for the first 20 minutes or so, and that performance varies, but it kind of leaves you with a little bit of hope from time to time that you might be able to get the game to be playable on the Steam Deck, but it's really not once you get past this area. This is probably about the best performance here that you'll see compared to other areas of the game that you get into. Unfortunately, it doesn't stutter and hiccup a lot yet, but it's pretty rough. And you'll see here, every time you load into a new save or a new area, it does take quite a while for everything to get loaded in there and ready to go. And of course, this is the 800p FSR, balanced on low here. If we take and we switch this over, we can take a look at native real quick, which is of course going to give you the best image quality. Going to be around 18 FPS, and that's in this area where things run pretty well. Later on, you're around 8 to 10 FPS. If you're at native when you get to the first little village or town area. When you go through here, we'll change this back over to quality, and we'll be just under what balanced was, so 23, 24 FPS for that, which is to be expected going from balanced to quality. So again, not a big difference, doesn't make it playable. Jump into performance, which will give us the worst image quality, and no big bump here either. We're just not going to get this game up to that 30 FPS or higher or get it very playable here. It's just not gonna happen on the Steam Deck, at least not at this time anyway. So we're gonna turn that motion blur off. We're gonna go back to our FSR balance just to have us a midpoint here for image quality and performance, and we'll take a look at moving around a little bit here in some of the gameplay. But there's only really so far I have to go. I think it's going to become pretty obvious pretty quick here that the game itself has issues in general, but especially on deck between the controller issues, the shader comp, which really is on all the devices. It takes quite a bit of time every time you boot up the game, which is not great for someone playing handheld and just trying to fit in smaller gaming sessions, and the performance bouncing from 18 to 28 FPS. Pretty much no matter where I go. And when you come up to areas that are going to have enemies or you've got to get into battle, you die a lot in this game very easily. It's a hardcore survival type game. I really like my time with it so far on my other PCs and stuff where it runs pretty well, but when you're trying to come into areas like this at such low FPS, I have zero confidence that I'm going to be able to aim properly, survive this, and all of that. And I've also got to do a ton of adjustment on my mouse situation here for the controls that I had to make to get this to where I could aim with the controller when I'm not using like a mouse and a keyboard. But I mean, all in all, it works, but I don't think very many people would consider this to be playable, especially in such a survival game where you are going to have some pretty rough areas. And here again, I need to adjust a lot of sensitivity because the stick just had my gun all over the place here in this area. But I did eventually later on get to tweak that in pretty good to where it basically felt like I was on a controller and less like I was using a mouse. It was all kinds of crazy on the joystick, but yeah, it can be tough to get it going right. And again, like the first little town village area here that you come to, I'm not even that far, 45 minutes, an hour into the game. 13 FPS or lower, and it's going to bounce all over the place. So I can only imagine what performance will be like later on when it's even busier and we have more things happening. It's just going to be really, really rough to play here and just not very great on the Steam Deck, unfortunately. And I'm seeing the same thing over on Windows for Deck, so I'm not even sure I'm going to bother with that. GeForce Now is great to play the game, but it won't work at all with controls, so it's out of the question here. Xbox Cloud Gaming actually works with the controls and works pretty well, so that's another option for you if you want to go in that way. The game runs 30 FPS on consoles, so it's going to stream 60 FPS and play 30 FPS, and that's what you're going to get here for that. But it does work better than playing it locally on the deck, so if you have Game Pass Ultimate, the game's already included there. You can play on PC, your console, and in the cloud, have the same saves, and be good to go. But if you want those Steam saves and you want to be playing the Steam version, it's going to be a pretty rough experience here on the Steam Deck for you. But anyways, guys, that's about as far as I'm going to go. I think we've proven the point. Stalker 2, not a great title for the Steam Deck right now, and it's having its issues elsewhere as well. So anyways, thanks a lot for coming to check out the video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.